All right, meeting's called to order, and Gary, we'd appreciate you opening in prayer.
All right. Our gracious God, Heavenly Father, come to the Lord this evening now. We thank you for the blessings of this beautiful day. We thank you for our township, our county, and our state, and our nation. We pray, Lord, we continue to bless us in all that we do and say. We're also thankful in this day and the past week in the altercations that are happening in our township. We're thankful that nobody got hurt. We're thankful that none of our first responders got hurt, our firemen. We're also thankful that these individuals are apprehended, and now they are under the oversight of the justice system. Continue to be with our firefighters and our first responders, our police officers, our Iowa County Sheriff, as they guide and protect us, give them outstanding view to our township employees, our DPW, those that work in the office here, give them outstanding. We're thankful for the service that they give us. We're thankful that they've been committed to working for our township. Be us now, Lord, in this night, in this meeting. May you give us discernment, knowledge, and wisdom as we make decisions for the township. May we ultimately glorify you in all that we do and say. Keep us from sin now, Lord, for many sins. In Jesus' dear name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Gary. Stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Well, there's that full board tonight. That's good. Got a couple of meetings here. We've had a lot of summer things going on, so everybody's back in time for fall. And there's a matter of approving the agenda tonight. Someone wish to make a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any comments about tonight's agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. One opposed? All right. Passed. You've received communications and letters and various reports for your information. Trust that you've availed yourself of that information. Looking out to our public tonight, we've quickly moved to item 7 for public comment. I know I see Mr. Stivey here, who's always here just in case there might be something to be said to some of these items that come up on number 8. But if you have an item you wish to speak to that's on our agenda this evening, now is the opportunity to do so. And then there will be another public comment period later in the meeting. So is there anyone here tonight that wishes to address any of the items on tonight's agenda? All right. Seeing none, we'll close that initial public comment period. And we'll go to item number 8, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any comments by board members, concerns, questions? All right. You like it that way, do you, Todd? All right, we're good. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And the consent agenda is passed. Item 9, really the principal item, or one of 2 tonight on our agenda, is the tentative adoption of the 2023 budget and to schedule a public hearing. So, as the board knows, this is our normal protocol. This is a normal time of year to do so. And is there anyone here who wishes to make a motion to approve the resolution with tentative budget remain tentatively adopted for 2023 and to schedule a public hearing for September 26th of 2022?
I'll make that motion.
And support.
Moved and supported. Okay, this is an opportunity now for board discussion about the budget. So everybody's got a copy of that, and we've also received it previously and discussed it somewhat. And even if you didn't send something to the whole board, I don't want you to feel that you're foreclosed from speaking, or maybe you had an idea that you just didn't send and you'd like to bring up. Certainly have that prerogative. I know Michael and I each have, and we intend to, I'm sure, address those. We can start with us, but I might rather look to the others to see if there are other items, and I don't care which way we begin. I'll start down here with Kirsten. Kirsten, is there anything that you wish to bring up, or would you rather wait for some of the items that have been mentioned that will be discussed?
I think that some of the items that both of you brought up in the emails, I'm in support of obviously discussing. Outside of that, when looking at, I think we can discuss it if we so wish, but looking at the 2023 versus 2022, there were some interesting increases that I hope we can have the time to discuss and walk through. I don't know if that's exactly something that we do right now with my time. Is that where we want to start?
So historically, you'll notice there's certain things that'll jump out at you, right? You probably see 8 or 10 each year.
Yep.
And commonly those are brought up to say, can you explain to me that difference? Now, if you haven't asked that question beforehand, this would be the time.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so I think my first question is, and I emailed you guys what I'm referencing here as well, is general. I'm seeing an overall increase of expenses about 22% to last year, which I find concerning, and there's some reasons for some of them, and I'll ask the questions that I haven't gotten answers for yet. But generally, as we look at 2023, there's obviously concerns around increased inflation, possible recession. To see a 22% increase across, averaging 17% across all of the different departments is a concern for me. The specific questions that I had, we can start with, sorry, going first is hard. Around, okay, superintendent, let's start with Parks and Rec, just because I know that one intimately. And I'm just jumping to it, guys. I noticed that one of the reasons for the salary increase, which is, I think, a 37% increase in salaries to last year, which is a lot higher than the other departments. It was shared that it was for a DPW employee, and I guess my first question is, why wouldn't that be in then that department? Why is it in Parks?
There's not the DPW person in Parks.
Okay, that was the response. I think you had responded back to me on some of my questions per each page.
Oh, to change it, Tom. All right, so Tom is now, is he out or in Parks? Okay, so Tom, point 2 of Tom, which was in DPW because he was doing Thursdays for them, he's now all Parks. So that's a small piece. And then 20% of Rod.
Rod?
Yep.
Okay.
Rod Weirson.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. Is that similar? I see another salary increase, 13% in Senior Center. I asked these questions around Parks and Rec and Senior Center because as I look at the other departments that clearly came back as a interest to our public, around security, safety, roads, those are things that make sense to increase investment in or expenses in. Senior Center, we love it, but such an increase in salary and some of the expenses there was a question that I had. And then Parks and Rec, increased to last year. Last year we spent in Parks and Rec $657,000, and this year we're slated for 1.1, which is a 70% increase.
Yeah, $355,000 of that is capital outlay or fixed asset.
Okay, yep. And I saw that, and you kind of itemized out, and I want to thank you for that because that was different from last year. Can you explain to me, because last year we had, I think we defined maintenance differently, and maybe not, but capital outlay, what I saw that you itemized them out as is more maintenance items. Why would that be not in maintenance? Right? So I'm looking at... Because
you're not just fixing it. I mean, if it's a playground, you're going to replace it with a new playground. So that's a new fixed asset, replacing an old one.
So that's considered capital outlay and not maintenance? And we didn't have that behavior last year in 22?
You mean this current year?
Yeah.
We haven't replaced anything like that this year.
Okay.
That I know of, right, Rod? Yeah.
Okay, so we have an increase of a new personnel to the Parks and Recs for salaries, and then we have a $350,000 capital outlay, which is what you've outlined here.
Well, it's a partial person in
partial
salaries and wages.
That's right, Rob.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That brings to me to my other question around last year in 22 we had $165,000 in 22 for general office, and this year it's $0. Do we know what the difference is between last year and this year?
Oh, 201. 201, with the state chart of accounts required changes, you can no longer use 201. So those expenses obviously are still there, so they're spread out through various departments.
Okay, what are they, what's like majority of those expenses? 165,000 would have been what?
Rods in 201, things, again, I didn't budget for 201, so I'm not sure exactly what rods is in there, and some other items that didn't fit directly in a department, or someone said they didn't fit in a department, so 201 was a place to put an expense if it didn't fit exactly in a department. So that's why you don't see it on this year's budget, because 201 is not a department choice any longer.
Would it be possible to have like salaries, because it's now in two departments, Rod's salary, could that be part of salaries in general for like the township as far as personnel?
I don't know what you mean.
So like, for example, I think we itemize out your salary, correct? Or like the certain department salaries. Could we, because Rod is part of...
Rod spread out several departments because he covers several departments.
So do you though, right?
I oversee everything. He runs departments. And Mike and I discussed this last week. I'm not going to change that. That's an accounting thing. I can provide you with Rod's salary information, but that's how it's spread, so you can accurately just measure the cost by department.
Okay, so all of them are, because of this new behavior, all of the departments almost are appearing like they have an increased salary.
What new behavior?
Like spreading that salary across instead of keeping it in this general office, 201, it's spread in the other areas, and it's showing like there's an increase in salaries across, an over-indexing of salary increase across different departments. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but I would say the 165 on $15 million budget, it's nominal, the amount that's being spread.
And I agree with you, and that was what I brought up at the last meeting, was it's very confusing to distribute the assistant to the superintendent's salary across all these, because one that was always confusing to me, I'm like, why are township board members getting longevity pay? Is it based on the amount of time you've been here? But actually, the reason that's in there is because that's part of the distribution of ROD. So it makes it very confusing to get an accurate read of these departments.
How is it confusing?
Because actually when it's township board, it shows longevity, $400 budgeted, but nobody on the board is getting any longevity pay.
So what's confusing?
I guess the distribution, when you look at different departments, like Kirsten had brought up, is she mentioned parks, and the big increase, well,
actually
explains it, and then,
no, it doesn't. The big increase is appropriating for potential salary and wage expense. We are falling far behind Parks and Rec for two reasons. We lost our SWAT program in early 2020, and we're losing Andy Frank, our arborist, who we've had here for over 30 years. So we're going to have to make up some gaps there between the loss of SWAT, which we spent.
Yeah, that was actually pretty expensive for the SWAT program.
Well, I wouldn't say it was expensive. I wouldn't say 45 grand is expensive for what was provided for the township. So we don't have SWAT, and now we don't have Andy Frank, so now we're going to have to figure out, do we have to add more personnel or outsource to make up that gap?
And we've already been doing that too with the trimming around the gravestones in the cemetery.
That's it. That's what we've been doing.
And that's what we've been pushing for, at least I have for the past 4 years, is subcontracting out. We subcontract out 95% of our mowing to private companies, yet we'll spend $40,000 on new mowers every 3 or 4 years, where it just makes sense to just sub it all out. And then it frees up their time too. So that's something to consider.
Well, that's a different issue.
Right.
Yep.
I'm just saying it does make it more confusing to analyze each department not knowing, what percentage. I mean, I guess it'd be nice if you mix in Rod's compensation, and all these departments do a footnote below it that gives those numbers, so that way there's an accurate
So is it confusing to you? Because I can give you those percentages.
I think
Absolutely. I mean, transparency I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess, and along those lines, Kirsten had brought up the capital outlay and the maintenance issue. I believe parking lot repairs, that's maintenance. You can't capital outlay that. That's a repair.
Well, if it's a wholesale replacement, it'd be a fixed asset. If it's fixing some holes, it'd be repairs and maintenance.
I just had a couple more points on.
Can we check with the accountant on this stuff?
Check on what? There's a dollar threshold typically for a fixed asset or capital asset. And I don't have them memorized for each asset type, but there's nothing hidden here. It's appropriation. It is very difficult, if not impossible, to predict repairs and maintenance and predict which door will break or what hole will happen where or how many holes. So what you do with repairs and maintenance is you look at historical numbers and you see a trend and you carry those over. You add amounts if you think things are going to be more expensive to repair. But to project and predict repairs and maintenance by item, not sure you can do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is I think that $100,000 shouldn't be in capital outlay. It should probably be repairs and maintenance. Is this following GAAP accounting or gas accounting?
Which 100,000? Because we're jumping all over.
What page are we on?
Parks and Recreation 24.
Yes. Right. Right. And those usually are the smaller amounts. So which one are we looking at?
I think
24.
Page 24.
Capital outlay fixed asset, $350,000.
Page 24 or 25?
Mine says page 24, 32.
33.
Huh?
25 and 33.
25. If you're looking at the report that was sent out last agenda.
Which version?
The version that has board budget on a column, page 25.
Mine's page 24. And I didn't print out the first three versions either.
So is there an accounting question or an appropriations question?
Both is at the correct place for that. And it wouldn't really make much difference. Maybe it's the accounting end where it's labeled as capital outlay, but it's actually maintenance. And when
which one? 5,000?
350,000.
Those are going to be fixed assets. Those will be depreciated. Those are typically over 25 grand and determine a useful life. The smaller items that are capital outlays would be like the video NVR system. So you either go fixed assets, capital outlay. Now, for general fund accounting, they're expensed because they're general fund items. It's just a descriptor depending on the type of asset and the dollar amount of the asset. But these are all accounting questions.
I'd like to finish my section. I think I have more
Sure.
things to drain, and then we can maybe circle back at that at Mike's part. So two things. One, we'll get back to Parks and Rec, because I think there's a lot of questions maybe around that, but for this could be an easy one. For the senior center, we have capital outlay for the new van, and you had said that's for grant. We have grant money for that.
Yeah.
Why would, this is a stupid question probably, why would we have capital outlay for money that's grant money?
Well, the capital outlay is the expense side. The grant money is the revenue side. So
we are paying for those new vans
with grant money.
But then the capital outlay is the maintenance of them?
No, we purchase it, and then we submit paperwork, and we get reimbursed for that purchase. And that
okay, so that will be covered essentially. That'll be net zero.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, and then it's around salaries again.
Yep.
Okay, so this goes back to my point around lay of the land. Typical inflation increase is about 10%. I'm seeing spikes in particular areas where it's well above that, and I have questions around it. And it's around departments that came back as functions in which the our community, rather us invest in or not rather us invest in. The first one is probably makes sense, but board review has a 14% increase. So interestingly enough, sheriff and fire are only 9 and 8% increases, and those are where the community wants us to invest salary. And you might have good reasons for it. You might be like, yep, got it. We have to get a new person in. Yep. But I would think that'd be net neutral when we have someone leave and we bring somebody in, especially as we're looking at 23 and where everything's going from an economy perspective. Cemetery, we're up 17% in salary. Senior transportation, I have 25%. Senior center, I have 13%. And parks, 34%. You already explained that's a DPW person that's coming full-time now on. And then water is only a 2%. So it's interesting that, water, sheriff, fire, we don't really have an increase in salary, but we have these increases in areas in which it, to me, doesn't make sense.
You're doing percentages, though, which is going to make it look off, because we're dealing with smaller numbers.
Yeah.
You're going to take higher percentage change. So I would deal in the dollars more than the percentage change.
So it's up 500 for board review, which is, but cemetery's up 11K.
And it's simply an appropriation, remember,
18K,
not a mandate to spend.
Yep. That's where I get confused, because Rod wasn't in that. So Rod's showing up in cemetery, senior center, and parks maybe then. Versus sorry, I don't mean to call you out, but before you were in this other area and now you're here. And that to me is overinflating these salaries, which makes it look odd.
It's not,
to last year. It makes it look weird because the departments that, are the foundation, the safety, security, the roads, the water, don't have that kind of increase.
It seems like, just to kind of throw in my 2 cents to the conversation, it seems like, yes, it looks weird. It looks weird. I totally agree. But we all know why it looks weird, because they've explained it to us that Rod's salary has changed from being together in one location to broken out in multiple. And so it seems like our accounting is following the best practices for accounting, and our accounting is set up to follow the guidelines that we are held to. And so yes, it looks weird, but we all know why. And so we wouldn't go against the accounting rules just to make it more comfortable with how it looked last year. If we can be within the rules on the up and up and all understand why, then I'm just kind of confused why we're spinning our wheels on this again this meeting and not just moving forward. We know, it looks weird, it looks different. But we have addressed why that happens. It has to do with Rod's salary. It also has to do with the fact that we're facing an uncertain economy, and with inflation, you want to, budget a little bit over in case there is inflation so that we have money there to spend if we need to. It just feels to me like we're spinning in a world of questioning Rob's budget when we've asked these questions and we know why it happens. And it doesn't do any good to go backwards and redo it like it was last year, because the new rules say that we can't redo it like it was last year.
Kirsten wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay.
So we discussed it.
Yep.
She wasn't here to discuss it.
I wasn't at that meeting, at that part of that meeting either, but I watched the video of us discussing exactly this, so.
I just think that it's, I want to bring to light the percent increases in salary and then to give a juxtaposition to perhaps what's going on with our constituents and our community and our economy and what the optics might be, and does it make sense to increase the salary in these particular departments if we've hired them or not. And that is the discussion that, I'm calling out for the board. Okay. Given your opinion.
Yep.
And you'll have some to share as well later. But that's a little bit of the background of why I'm bringing it up, is to kind of give a little bit of some pause and thought to these percent increases, and do they make sense?
Okay. Kristen, just to be clear, when you're making the comparisons and the percentages, are you looking at the 2022 amended budget line or column, and then the 2023 manager budget? 2022 activity?
I've got two things I'm looking at. The one I'm looking at for the salaries was an extra exercise I did, and I've emailed Rod, and Rod's seen all that, and Rob. The other increases I've done is that email that I sent you. So I took literally the 2022 summary from Dan, the revised one, the latest and greatest, and then compared it to 23. And so that's where I'm getting, and I'm seeing the percent increases from a total department perspective. So not just salary, the whole function, the whole behavior.
Okay, because as I went through, and I'm only dealing with what was attached, that being the proposed budget, the 33 pages. I couldn't come up with percentages as high as what you just indicated. But it might be, again, I don't know what numbers you're using, but when you use the 2022 amended budget and the 2023 manager budget, yes, the percentages vary some from department to department, a bit like Rob described as to why, but they weren't as high in numbers as what I hear you saying when I do the math.
Which one in particular?
Well,
if we want to
I don't have a particular
this.
one. I just went through. I can find an example. Are you working off this page, or off this document? Like, for example, I don't know, the assessing department, 2022 amended budget, 160 was the amount there, and they're proposing 172. That's about 7%. Election, of course, we have fewer elections. Not a good example.
That's an interesting one because it's a huge difference.
Fire department, 2022 amended budget, 215. 2023 manager budget, 232. That's about 7%.
Yeah, I got 8%.
Building department.
That was
building
one
department,
that was
about 6%. I mean,
yep, those
I
are
guess
the
I'm
ones
not knowing. Yeah.
The higher increased ones were the ones I highlighted that are interesting. The sheriff, fire, water all have low salary increases, and that's interesting to me. They're right on par with inflation. In fact, you'd almost think, gee, do they deserve more? And then you look at like cemetery, senior center, park; those have the higher percent salary, and that's the juxtaposition I was bringing forward as to,
It's again because they're smaller numbers, Kirsten. So the percentages are going to.
I get that. I do.
So
we're adding new people into, and also we're adding new people into parks that maybe other departments aren't adding to, right?
Right.
Again, this is appropriations. Nothing's been done. It's not a mandate to spend. It's trying to plan for what potentially could happen, and then we have the appropriation to allow for that. But I don't look at, board of review, it's $4,000. I look at it for 5 minutes. That percentage doesn't concern me. It's $2,000 on a $15 million budget. So I look at the bigger numbers much more closely. And if we don't spend a board of review, we don't spend it. It's just appropriation.
Right. That's one thing I've appreciated, and I believe will continue, is you can say, and I do think, I follow you now. I mean, percentages lie and so on. One thing that we've been good about, and I don't know if the federal government does this quite so well, but trying to grow your department to the size of your budget doesn't really happen here. So if there's an excess, there's an excess. Generally speaking, that's been the case. I don't think people are, if we don't spend this money, we're not going to get it next year. Doesn't go on. So yeah, I might say with Kirsten, I might look at a couple of these and go, did we need to bump that one as much as we did? Probably not, but then will we actually spend it? No, we probably won't. So that gets back to your point then, Becky, which is,
Jim, we added an FTE to DPW this year, the first FTE add in that department since 1998.
Budget is the guide, and historically we've had an incredible cushion. And I'm stretched to even find a time where we went over. I think it was once or twice where it came before the board. But otherwise, our staff has been incredibly diligent in how the funds are being allocated. But this is a guide. And we have no debt. So I feel very comfortable with it.
And part of, again, budgeting for appropriations, salaries, wages is trying to figure out and project that, because as we have had people leave as we look for new people, we are not able to hire them on at the same rate. The structure is higher. So that has to be taken into account. And it's allowing the legal maximum to spend, not a mandate to spend, to plan.
I think in closing of my part, and then we move on, is net 22% increase in expenses from this year to last year. And if we've always been very, I'll say this is my word, fat as a budget. And this could be the year where maybe we don't blow and cushion ourselves as much. We actually really be surgical about it and give money back to the constituent, whether that be a couple portions or percentages less of a tax rate. This would be the year to do it because of inflation and the recession that we're going into. It's more of like an optics perspective from my end. And that's my final reason why we're talking about the different salaries, the different increases. We're 22% increase to last year. I get that we have the money. Does it make sense to give money back?
So
that's it.
Thank you, Kirsten. And I think we're going to ping pong back and forth to the ends, move toward the middle. That'll make me last. Kirsten, I want to say though before we move on, because that's a number that people might otherwise hang their hat on, say 22%. I want to know, is that factoring in the money that's been allocated in from the ARPA funds, for example, like the fire truck, or is there something in there that would create an increase of that magnitude that is explainable in that way?
Let's talk about that. So general fund, 15.2 million this year, last year. So general fund, I believe, sums up, which I did the math, it looks like it did. So 2022 is 12.5 was all in, and then 2023 is coming in at 15.2. That's a $2.7 million increase. So is that $2.7 million grant money that's just going to be coming in later, and then we're net neutral, or what? You bring up an excellent point, Jim.
So the question, I guess, to turn to you before we go over it, I don't want that 22% to just hang out there unexplained. Do you understand when she says we're up 22% from what?
Are we talking appropriation for expenditures?
We're talking about the summary roll-up, what you send out that looks like the summary roll-up compared to summary roll-up.
Mm-hmm. Well, 1.7 million is a fire truck.
Okay, so that's fire department. That's that 2. They're up 2.1, so 1.7 is a fire truck. Cool.
295,000 is new turnout gear in the fire department.
Say that one more time. 95.
295,000. So that.
Parks and Rec is up 458,000.
So fire department's then up 5.2% if you take those items out. Parks and Rec, if you take out 355,000 in capital outlay that was not in last year's budget, you're down to a 16% increase. In transportation, if you take out the minivans, which will be reimbursed, you're actually less than 22.
Can I ask you, Rob, we've had a pattern of budgeting and so on in sort of that estimating process, and there's always, particular years that hit us, for example, with a new fire truck or a capital outlay at a particular park. Mm-hmm. Is the methodology you're using something that is in line with what Dan Carlton used for years? Have you talked with Dan about laying this out in the manner you have? In other words, this is because it looks the way that it's been done in the past to me.
It's a combination of my experience in budgeting, which is many years, speaking with Dan, having Dan look at, especially on the revenue side, for reasonableness in his comments, and looking at past budgets. So yes, all the above. Okay.
Thank you, Kirsten. John, you don't have to contribute to this discussion, but you can.
Just real quick, we're audited, I believe, every year, and they're always impressed at how detailed and well organized. And Dan has done an incredible job, elected 7 times. He's worked with Rob on this. The positions of clerk and treasurer and supervisor used to be full-time in Georgetown Township. They're part-time. And the goal of Dale Moore was to hire the best and have that individual, full-time individuals run the township, and they've done an incredible job. And I think we've hired the best with Rob. He hasn't been on very long, but I think he's put together a terrific budget. I think we ought to be supporting him. I think we're micromanaging him, and I'm worried about our staff. We've got some incredibly good people that are leaving us, and I think we have to be concerned about wages and why are they leaving? What can we do? Comments concerning Rob have been very, very positive. They like him. I think he's doing a wonderful job. But I feel like he's being grilled right now, and this has been going on for a number of meetings, and this is how you drive people away. I think we have to be careful of what we're doing here. These were full-time positions. They're not. And as trustees, we're part-time. Our employees are the backbone. They're under our direction. We are responsible to them. But we should also trust them and give them some flexibility. We have no debt. We have an incredibly well-run government. And we are micromanaging right now to the point of embarrassment. And this is a guideline, and you still run through us when we spend the money. A lot of times when you run for grants, one of the problems that Georgetown has had is that we do have monies put away. But if they've been allocated for sewers and so forth and allocated, it helps us with getting those grants. Rob's background is finance. He's very, very strong in this. We've kept Dan on a retainer to go through all of this to make sure that we're going to be in good shape. Normally this has been passed and we'd have taken care of this a long time ago. We're micromanaging this, and it's also affecting our staff. I'm very happy. I like the way it's set up. I'm concerned about wages for our employees, and I am worried about the economy. I think we're going to run into a tough situation. I think having a cushion is just smart. We are the envy of most communities at 2.25 mils. Unbelievably low. We have a cottage up north, and I pay more to the local college up there that's 35 miles away than I do to Georgetown Township, percentage-wise, as far as mills. So, no, I'm very pleased. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Gary?
Couple comments. If we take the budget of 2023 and we pull out the $1.5 million for the fire truck, we're at 1.3541 million budget. And then my biggest problem with the budget has been the copper to lead, $550,000 the budget for that. And just to give you a little update on that, Rob and I met with Roger Victory and his assistant Rachel on Friday to try to figure out how to get out of that because, to be honest with you, that's just a terrible cost. But between those two things, you're looking at $2.2 million in the budget. $500,000 for the copper to lead, which is an unfunded mandate as far as I'm concerned. You're looking at a fire truck, which is a one-time expense. We're replacing something we have. So you take those two things out, really not looking at that big of an increase in the budget from last year. So, I mean, I'm pretty happy with most of the things. Budgets are our guideline. I do lots of budgets too. And I think it's correct when we say we don't grow our departments to the budgets. We have our departments, we give them a guideline of money. So we don't say, I don't hear anybody's department going, well, we have this money, so we should do this. I think everybody's been very frugal with what they do and how they spend the money. So, other than that, that's my 2 cents worth on the budget. I'm good with what it is. The two items that bother me, as far as not bother me, the two biggest items is that fire truck, which is a one-time expense. How old is the fire truck now?
Coming up on 25 years.
So you're looking at, amortizing $1.7 million over 25 years. It's a one-time expense. The copper lead thing's $500,000 this year. Could be $500,000 again next year. So that's what we got to work on trying to get rid of that. If we take those two expenses out of here, we're not looking at a big increase in the budget.
Where's copper lead? Sorry, Gary. Which one are you? Where's that one hiding?
What's that?
Where's the copper lead hiding?
DPW.
Copper lead is it's on utilities.
Got it. Okay.
It's in the back.
Got it.
So it's $550,000. So Other than that, I agree with John. I think that, we have a low tax base here. When people say want to cut taxes, I say nobody wants us to cut taxes. Until I see a millage for a public school go down, I will never believe that we need to cut taxes. Every millage increases taxes. But we pay 78% of our property taxes to public schools, and nobody votes a millage down. If you're not willing to vote a millage down, then you can't come to me when our township point you gets 8% of those property taxes. I think we're good with our money, better with our money than the schools are, and yet nobody ever votes them down. So that's my opinion.
Thanks, Gary. Becky.
My opinion is that I think that the budget is incredibly well done. I'm very comfortable with where we have budgeted. I think that our staff did an amazing job putting it together for us and answering all of our questions. I apologize, Kirsten, because I chimed in during your time. It just felt like it was going to be a very long time before it got to me, and I wanted to speak to the point that you had brought up, so I apologize for using some of my time at that point. But I sat down with Rob and chatted with him about the many questions that I had, because I am not an expert on budgets, and felt very comfortable with every question I had and where we were at. I think that it is responsible to make the projections that have been made. I think that this budget is going to serve us well into the year ahead. So that's all for me.
Okay, thank you. And I don't mean by doing it this way to say, oh, you can't chime in. I'm obviously not trying to be rigid that way, but it just makes sense to give people the floor. So, Michael?
Yeah, I'd start with the email that I had sent with my suggestions. First one, most important one being reducing the millage rate to 2 mills from 2.5, which translates into roughly $380,000. Grand scheme of things, very minimal. And I think hopefully everybody read the reasoning, my support for it. Because every year our net position increases. Last year was $3 million. We had a surplus. 2020 was $2.4 million. 2019, $2.2 million. So it's just, we have extra money every year, a surplus. And then looking at the surveys coming back from our constituents, the overwhelming vote for top pick was reduce the millage rate. And I think that one it's very doable. I know we didn't want to do it last year. I don't even think I even tried last year, although was that before the new board came in? No, it was 2 years ago. Just because we had dropped it $500,000 in 2020, and kind of wanted to see how that shook out, see how it affected us, and it didn't affect us. So that's why I think it's not a lot of money, but it's something, and it's what our constituents are asking for, and we are representatives of those constituents. It's our job to listen to the people of this community and honor their wishes, listen to them. So that's why I'd be pushing for that. We've got plenty of money. And the question is, how much do we need? My second item was increasing road budget. I don't know, I put 4.5. I mean, 4 I think is good. I would have to see, we haven't got any updates on how our road list is looking. What's our long-term vision? What's our goal on this? How are we doing? Are we looking good? Have we repaired, resurfaced all the roads that were on our list? We're good now? Are they done? Still going? What roads are coming up for next year, so we can start looking at those? I know Hunter's Drive is absolutely terrible. How that one got missed is beyond me. But a lot of the roads that I drive down are just in terrible condition. So we did 1 year of the $4 million for roads. That's just the start. We've got a lot of work to do. I'd at least like to stay on that path for this year. We might even do it next year, but we'll kind of do a road assessment at that point and see where we're looking. Are we caught up yet? And then make that decision. So 4.5 would be an extra $500,000 for roads. That was another top response of the surveys. Roads are important, and a lot of people are not happy with the roads in front of their house. So that's why I was at 4.5 in at least 4, and maybe it's 5. I guess if anybody wants to discuss it.
I can give you a little information on that. So last year, this is going by what we had with roads. Our poor roads, what they rated as poor, the county, was $6.3 million. And so we had $4 million in the budget. And so we got bids, from what they said was going to be $4 million, ended up being 3.2 or 3.3, I think. And so with what they had from last year, we still had $2.6 million that we need to resurface in the coming year. That's not for the coming year's list though. That's just what we didn't do last year because of lack of funds. So we had budgeted 4. They came up with $6.3 million. The roads need to be fixed. We did $4 million of that. We still have the bids came in low. We still have $2.6 million to fix of the roads that last year when they said were in poor condition. Now we'll get when we get that December, Rod, usually January. Yeah, last year they're a little bit late because of things, but they'll come out with another list. But this was 2.6. That's left over from last year. I was told by the county when they did the road by me, I talked to Bob, he said that we did 16 miles of road. He says, you will not do that amount of road the coming year. The prices are going to go up quite a bit. But he said we actually kind of hit it really good having the year that we did to spend the $4 million, because he said we got more roads done for that amount of money we probably ever will again, because we hit the bids right. Oil was still a bit cheap. Power was still cheap. So having said that, I'm just giving you a little information from last year what's left over.
Did he say roughly how much it's going to go up?
He did not know. That's I talked to him in July. He just said, I see labor going up. I see everything going up next year. I don't know if you'll be able to do 16 miles for that kind of money again. So, but like I said, we'll get an assessment in November for what needs to be done additionally from what we didn't get last year. So that's the information from last year.
I think especially with that information, if the prices are going to go up, that's all the more reason to at least maintain that $4 million or maybe do the extra. My thought on that.
Are you hoping people address the 3 main points of yours as you do them, or?
I'm not sure.
Not sure?
Yeah, if anybody wants to chime in, that's perfect. Gary gave some great information there. Costs will be going up.
Because potentially between things you and I raised, Michael, incidentally for the public's purpose, not in any sort of a meeting format, but in an advance notice, kind of like an agenda would be. If there's going to be any sort of change made, it's going to have at least 4 votes. And so while you're sharing it, I guess is the time to find out is there traction, right? So you've hit 2 of your items, but do you want to back up one and test the water on that and see if there's consensus, or do you feel like where things stand and you'd rather not seek a majority on the millage question?
No, I will do millage, but I'd like to wait on that one in case either of you have. I know what you had given for input, but in case Ryan has something else, that might affect the millage rate part. I'd rather wait for that one till the end. And even with this the $4 million, 4.5, it's $500,000. I just looked at some of the other items, and if we've got money, I think we should be using it for what our constituents are asking for. And then the third item, and this is probably a simple answer from Rob. It's not. We don't even need a vote on it. So our revenue sharing is listed. What do we got for revenue? $4.4 million. But because of the census, the 2020 census, we had an increase last year. What was it, $900,000 in revenue sharing?
Yeah, well, we got those 2 payments in April. To catch up. That was to catch up because the census 2020, but they didn't send the money. So in April of this year, we've got a 21 census adjustment, a 22 census adjustment. So we won't have those anymore. The formula is updated for us based on 54,000 residents. So those dollars, as you know, we get a percentage by the state constitution, a percentage of the sales tax that's collected. So that one is when you're budgeting revenues, you're doing it conservative. You typically want to be under, and if you miss budget, you miss it to your advantage. And in that, really, it's a combination. I'm looking at what Dan budgeted last year, which was 4.2, and again, concern about the economy next year. We get estimates from the state, but those are estimates. We get paid on collections, and we don't know what's going to happen next year if everything tanks. So it's a projection on the revenues on the conservative side. If we're under $600,000, that'd be great. I just don't know. So I'm budgeting conservative there. I bumped it $200,000 from the 2022 budget, and we'll see what happens with sales tax collections.
Yeah, historically we just bump it $200,000 every year. I mean, that's just what we do. Revenue sharing just every year. Next year, what are we going to budget for that? Just add $200,000 on it. So, and that's what it's done. That's why I'm wondering is what is that percentage for? Well, what do they have us at before the census? Like 48,000, or did they give us a rough idea percentage-wise what an increase that was?
Well,
with 54,000 residents.
I don't have it in front of me. I have 21, 22. I don't. They're projecting. We've gotten payments for the first 3 months, projections, I believe 700 to 800, because we get paid on the even months of the year. And again, I get very concerned if they're sending us an estimate. I'm going to budget under that estimate, not knowing what's happening next year.
Yeah, judging historically on where we're at as far as current activity, we're on track to be what we were, higher than last year, which was what, 4.8?
Yeah.
I mean, we're on track to hit pretty darn close to that. So that's why I think, I agree.
You might be absolutely right on that. We might come in.
And it's not anything we need to vote on, but it's what, I guess the underlying thing is underestimate what our revenues are significantly, overestimate what our appropriations and expenditures are going to be, and then at the end of the year, we're sitting on a surplus of $3 million.
Well, we're not. Because again, this is appropriations, not a mandate to spend.
I mean, actual based on the audits.
Again, we're not spending money just because we get it. It might go into fund balance, but we're not spending it just because we're getting it.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just saying is when we do a budget, it's just typically underestimate revenues, overestimate expenditures.
Well,
and when it all shakes out, we're safe.
That's conservative budgeting. So you want to plan for all possible contingencies. And you might be right. I might say after this year, you know what? I've done this year, and I can get less conservative on that revenue sharing on the budget next year. That's something I'll keep an eye on. Absolutely.
It wasn't something I was looking for a vote on or any change. It was just a question I had because
because we'll get payments in October, December, February, and if those are really high, that's going to tell me, well, their estimates are pretty good. But I get concerned because these are coming out of the budget office, out of Treasury, the estimates. And I'm not sure there's some folks in charge that want to show estimates that are tanking for election reasons. So I'm concerned about those estimates.
Well, and I don't think they know because when we were going through the whole Corona thing, I was in a panic because revenue sharing is a big part, but people aren't spending money.
Right.
So I reached out to SLAW, I reached out to Shane Hernandez because he was on appropriations. I'm like, Shane, you would know this. What are we looking at? What can we expect from the state for revenue sharing? We'll plan on nothing. Because they didn't know. I mean, they didn't know. So, and it ends up, we got a lot that year. So you just don't know, but you make guesses. I guess my other main things were, I just have issues with anytime there's something that's unassigned. And I brought it up last time. Becky, you watched the video. I don't know if you don't think you were here, so you probably watched the video. Kirsten, you might have missed it. But if I am all for it. If it says capital outlay or placeholder, If we can't assign an actual asset that we're purchasing, it's got to go.
Again, it's planning, and it can't be purchased without board approval.
And the reason I say that is because after 10 years of attending all the meetings at the township, finance, services, the pattern I see is, well, it's in the budget. We want this. Well, it's in the budget. Well, yeah. So if it's listed out, it's something specific, then yeah, that's fine. But when it's just a blank number, it's like, well, it's in the budget. Well, where is it in the budget? Well, it's under placeholder for $100,000. I don't mind a $5,000 placeholder, $10,000 placeholder, but when we're talking $100,000 placeholder.
Which placeholder are you not happy with?
Capital outlay, I'm at assessing here, just because it's a page I'm on. That's $38,000 capital outlay, new vehicle. One miscellaneous fire equipment, not to pick on the fire department. And I thought you had told me you were going to you overdid that. You were going to reduce it by $100,000.
Well, I can't reduce it. You guys would have to amend this budget to reduce it. So I said, I would be comfortable with a $100,000 amendment on that placeholder to the fire budget, because I think I am $100,000 high. But I presented my budget to you. You need to amend it. But again, it's not spent unless a majority of the board approves that expenditure next year. And I know I repeat myself, but that is what appropriation means. We cannot just spend $200,000 just because it's in the budget. If it's an item over $10,000, I need board approval.
Right.
And my point was, it goes to a committee, and the committee says, why do you need this? And so, well, it's in the budget. How does it go through?
Well, I have not experienced that, so.
Well, that's why I said I've been watching this for 10 years.
In the last 2 years I've been on the board, when did that happen here?
You put me on the spot.
Well,
Never heard anything.
I do not think that in the last 2 years I've been on the board that we have spent money in any department because it was in the budget. Everything, if you bought a vehicle, it had to come here and we had to approve the board. So, I'm just bringing it up because I don't remember that ever happening in the last 2 years where we spent money because it was in the budget.
I think there was a capital outlay for Parks Department for a high-low. I don't think it was broken just for capital outlay, but it wasn't specific on what it was. But then they go to finance. Might have been finance.
And you brought it here?
High-low. And it went to the board.
Went to the board.
Yep.
It was like 18,000. If I remember right.
We put a max of 20,000 or something, but it was one of what's in the budget.
I recall last budget we did it for Parks and Rec. There was like $600,000 capital outlay, and we didn't have it assigned anywhere. And I think we voted to put that back in general fund because it wasn't assigned. So that's what I remember. And if there's anything that's like $100,000 that's like that, it kind of makes sense to put it back in general fund. Just knowing what exercise we did last year, that made sense. Because then we saw, okay, it's there in the general fund. It wasn't that it didn't go anywhere. It was just that it went more into a spot where that could go to any particular needed department. And then you present a business argument to it, and it comes to the board. So that's my recollection of that theme of anything unassigned.
Ready for me to throw the mic to Brian, or were you looking for something, Michael? You wrapping up a point, or?
Yeah, Parks and Recreation, 200,000. Do we know what that's? Why 200,000?
Say it again.
Parks and Recreation.
Yep.
Repairs and maintenance, $200,000.
I think it's an asterisk on the bottom.
Oh, that's, again, me looking at historical numbers and appropriating funds to cover our typical repairs and maintenance in the parks, which is only increasing. That's simply an appropriation. So and basically I carried over a budget number that Dan had used, and we're 75 so far this year. It's just it's an appropriation if we need repairs and maintenance.
historically around 110, 120. And we don't want them to be razor thin close estimations.
Yep. So I borrowed that one from the 22 budget again. I'm still getting to know what kind of things we're dealing with in the parks. So, best estimate.
Do we typically just do a percentage for the estimation?
It all depends. It all depends. What I'm trying to do is, well,
balance revenues and expenditures?
No. I mean, I go line item by line item, but you're looking at, are there major items to purchase? Are there anything in there that's glaring that's going to increase or decrease? And using prior budget numbers as well, since it's my first cycle here in Georgetown.
Another quick one. So Dan Carlson, we're still consulting him, roughly $30,000 a year. Is that in the budget? Where would that fall?
Under superintendent.
Oh, it's under yours?
Yeah. Never mind, wouldn't it, Rob? Well, his stipend, I think it's under superintendent.
You know, I'm confused.
But I haven't looked at some of these line items in a few weeks, so I don't have it all memorized. But I'm almost certain Dan, and again, that's up in the air, how long that continues. So I think I have some money under superintendent for Dan.
The finance committee met a week ago, and we've met before, and I don't understand why we're asking these questions. I mean, you could have asked them directly, and many of these are procedural, and they have to run through you. I'm bewildered, and I feel like we're playing gotcha, and you've got a finance committee to handle these things.
We're tentatively approving the budget tonight, John. If there's questions, people need to ask them now. I mean, that's our job as representatives
I
of
understand that.
constituents.
This is to the extreme.
I mean, I guess I would like to
It's your turn.
interject and piggyback a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a month ago that we met, the last week. And I guess to kind of piggyback on the sentiment that you're creating here, whenever I hear like doom and gloom politician talk, it kind of perks my ears a little bit. Who's leaving? You saying like, I don't like the approach of like, if we don't do this, then people are leaving. You said that a couple different times at each meeting, and I'm just curious, like, do you have inside information of different people leaving? Because Victor left because he bettered his career. He went on, and I'm happy for him. But I just don't appreciate like the doom and gloom type of talk like that, and saying that we're micromanaging things. This is what this is for. We're still on the same timeline we would in a normal budget proposal type time. I mean, we're in the middle of September. That's when it's supposed to happen. So I guess that just kind of bothered me a little bit.
Someone grilled like this, ever.
Well, there is some changes that has occurred that have never happened before. Because now, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't personally like that Rod is now split up in all the departments. I don't like that. It's not clean. It kind of muddies it up a little bit. If it's something that we have to do, I understand. But I've never seen, I work for a nonprofit. You have every person's wages, it's visible. And especially someone that is over top of a department and not in a department. If he was in a specific department, I could understand. That's what I'm saying. Like,
First of all, let me clear something. It's not required.
Right.
It's good accounting practice.
but it still does muddy it up a little bit. And let's just be honest, it does. It's hard to kind of track the funds in full transparency as far as like, okay, how much is he in this one? How much is he in this one? So that's what I'm saying in that category.
So Ryan, does it list?
There is a big,
But we don't list other people in the salaries and wages in the department.
but they're in specific departments. He's over top of all the
You
departments.
say it's confusing. I don't agree with that, respectfully. It's not confusing. In salaries and wages, if you looked at Parks and Rec, do you know who's in there? Do you know DPW? I mean,
I know the individuals that would fall underneath
outside
that
of this group,
department.
outside of this group, the public, when they're looking at the budget online, do they know?
Probably not, but
That's my point.
Okay, but we're the representatives in this case. So
But when we talk
I want to make sure that
right.
we're transparent in this case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Love the $4 million for the roads. That was one thing that 2 years ago that we addressed. We were underspending. I remember back then putting together an entire spreadsheet how we had budgeted $25, $26 million. We had only spent $13 million at that time. I love that we're actually, because unfortunately roads are something that you don't kick the can down the road. You can't keep punting it. They just keep going bad. So I love that. Address that. I agree with Gary in the fact that the copper and lead stuff, that it's just a giant money grab. I don't think that's something that we should be partaking in anyway. I would love to seek counsel on that one. And then the last one would be, you mentioned the $20,000 for the van that would be reimbursed with a grant. Where does that show on the reimbursement side as far as like revenue? What line item?
It is.
Because I'm just trying to make sure I match it up. Because I don't see a line item for like a grant reimbursement.
Rod, it's under transportation grant, correct? First, page 1, transportation grant, 639201. On page.
Oh, sorry. I went up to superintendent.
And I've got 150 budgeted.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I do my due diligence to match it up. So that's pretty much my 2 cents.
Where do you stand on the millage rate idea reduction that Michael's presented?
I mean, he showed some, obviously following a treasurer and how he laid it out. I think there is funds available to be able to give it back to the community. I honestly do. That being said, we don't know what the next couple of years have in store as far as inflation and everything like that. So
sounds like a good politician's answer. What do you think of the idea of reducing it to 2?
I would actually like the idea. I would be for it. Giving it back. That was the number 1 item on the survey that we received. That, roads, security, and safety. That's why I'm a firm believer in the road side. I think based on how the numbers have been laid out, I think 2 is a very still achievable number that you can go down to. It's a quarter of a millage rate. So, I would be in support of something like that.
I'll go back to what I said earlier though. To base everything on the surveys you got, you're allowed to base on the surveys you didn't get either.
I agree.
So if you sent out 15,000 surveys and you got 4,000 back, that means 11,000 surveys, 7,000 people are happy with the way things are.
That's a generous number right there.
Do you agree?
I think we got 1,000 or 2,000 back out of however many.
Well, I'm using a generous number.
I'm accentuating your point, which
Right.
is even a greater disparity.
So
Yeah.
people are happy with the way things are because they're not sending back. So that's my opinion.
I've never thought of it that way, and I really like that perspective on it, Gary. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I just had never thought of it that way.
Even once in a while.
I love it.
Well, and I was going to just address Ryan's too with that. I didn't give the other points. The reasoning behind that is with the sale of homes, older homes, we're going to get more revenue in property tax because the house, somebody that lived there for 40 years wasn't paying much in taxes. Well, now it changed hands. Also, new builds, that's a big one. I know because I have a new build. They get hammered with taxes. Hammered. So, and we're averaging 175 new homes a year. So that revenue just keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and that's why we keep having more and more money. And then on top of that, we're sitting on, what are we at now? 10 million in the bank in investments. We've got a lot of, how did we get all that money? And that's the question is, how much is enough?
That 175 is going to go down. New builds. That's going down.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep.
There's a retraction now.
Yeah, the big builders have had meetings about this months ago saying on all their subs planning about half of what we did last year.
I'll jump in here then at the end. Rob, first of all, hats off to you. It's got to be a big process to go through when you're first time doing it, albeit you've been in finance and you've done budgets and so on in the school context. It's still new. It's a lot to get your arms around. It's,
And private sector before school.
Well, exactly. No, it's not an easy task. So appreciate that. I know, Rod, you're part of that too. I'm grateful, frankly, as I think we all are still, and I don't think you take this in any way as to slight your abilities, but I'm glad that you reach out to Dan because that's why we're having him consult for a while. You'd be foolish not to. When you have someone who does something for 30 years and then 35 years, if you didn't ask him questions, I'd think something was wrong. So I appreciate that not only do you bring expertise and now learning curve and coming up to speed with what we do here, but you've reached out to the guy who did it before you for decades, and I think it's really, it gives me greater peace of mind, and I know you'll need that less and less, as time goes on, but thank you. And to Ryan's point, and I would say to all of you, this is one of our chief duties, as a board, and so this is an important time of year, anytime it comes about with budgets, and, some years we've had more debate than others, but I think on the whole, it's a serious task for us as board members, and I appreciate the fact that everyone has taken it seriously. To the degree that sometimes we, can nitpick here and there, I think we should try to avoid that. But I think on the whole, we're trying to do our due diligence and to be good stewards. So I commend the whole board in that respect. Just to touch on, I brought up two things. I think I already know where one of them's going, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But before, I want to preface that with the millage rate suggestion. And Michael, you probably didn't think you'd get 4 votes for that, much the same as I don't think I'd get 4 votes for one of the things I brought up. But it's a conversation. It's one that can be had. A couple of years ago, we did reduce the millage by a half a point. But I always like to remind people, because I'm charged with going out and being the public face for the township, and I go out and I speak at various places and represent. And one of the things I'm really proud to say when I go places is that we are the lowest millage rate in all of Ottawa County. So what about Blendon? When you add the other special millages, we are the lowest millage rate in all of Ottawa County. That's amazing. So that when I hear that we have budget surpluses, rather than feeling bad about that and thinking we should give it back, I'm like, wow, that's really great. We can be the lowest millage rate, lower than these others, manage it better, apparently, than these others, in some respects, I would say, and have a surplus to be able to, we call it a surplus, but really a rainy day fund or a fund for capital outlay and the like. I'm pretty happy about that. Really pleased when I hear that. I think the number of survey responses we got were a small percentage, like Gary said, of the overall population. I don't believe there's a consensus at all in this community for reducing our millage. And that's amazing to say, because if there's one thing we all complain about with government, it's taxes and wasteful spending. We don't wastefully spend and we don't overtax. I've been now, this is my 14th year, and I have had very few over 14 years complaints about our taxable rate, our millage rate, even when we were at 2.75. And I'd remind this board, as I think you all know, the voters authorized us to go to 4 mills years ago. We could go to 4 mills without a vote. We could nearly double where we are at without a vote of the community. We're not going to do that. We don't need to do that. But the fact that we have budgeted well has allowed us to reduce and reduce and reduce over the years, that if you saw that trend line, we are in a very sweet spot, I believe, right there. And I see no reason to, especially with the unknowns going forward with maintenance costs and salary increases and other things that we need to plan for, and inflation and the like, I think we really would be imprudent. I think we would be irresponsible, quite honestly, to lower a millage rate that people are not clamoring to be lowered. When you talk to people, and you've had the same experience whether you say so or not, most people you talk to say, I love the tax rate in Georgetown compared to what my friends pay in Hudsonville or Granville or Wyoming or Kentwood or nearly any other municipality. So we've all heard that, and it is true. This is the one I think I'm going to lose. So you guys know I floated the idea of the road budget being in line, in fact, higher than what we've historically kept it. So for a number of years, it was anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million. Then $1.5 million began to become somewhat customary, maybe $1 million to $1.7 million. And then we got, I think, just up to $2 million. And we have a cycle that we'd run on, and it's worked really well for a lot of years. We doubled it last year because I'd say 2 reasons. One, there's a sense that we need to catch up on being behind somewhat, and part of it too was the board that was not going to agree to spend money on anything else, and that was one we could all go, yep, roads. And so we went to $4 million. I don't think we need to do $4 million again. I would go to 2 million, personally. And the reason, at least that I understood, we allocated 2 more million again this year was that we had the ARPA funds and that we were looking to make an allocation, which isn't one that has to be made this year, but there's some reasons why you might want to. Here again, I'm going to cut this short. I know that I can tell that there's not the consensus to move it back down off from 4 million, but I will say this in conceding the point. You know, even this past year when we were at 4 million, we allocated, I believe it was roughly 400,000 to paths on Cottonwood. And so it was understood that paths and roads were underneath that figure. And I would remind this board, when we come to allocate this 4 million, that roads and paths are under this 4 million. And we shall see, I guess, where the votes lay as to whether or not all 4 million goes to roads, or whether we might get, say, 3.6 or something to roads and 400, elsewhere, 100,000 to repave around the Maplewood Park Lake, or to do something along 36 or someplace like that. But we've got precedent for that as well. So roads, asphalt, has meant to this board roads and or paths. So to that degree, I can take
Passports.
Passports.
Passports looked at tar paths. I'm not sure this board looks at 4 million for tar paths. They look at it for roads.
But this board just spent 400,000 out of the 4 million last year on paths.
Where?
Cottonwood.
Oh, sidewalks.
Okay. Well, that's what you use the word sidewalk.
Well, there's a difference between a bike path and a sidewalk. I'm in construction. You realize that. So when you go,
I use the word path because generally we distinguish between what we will pay for and what the homeowners pay for.
Right.
And sidewalks homeowners have paid for, paths the township has. We haven't always been consistent in our terminology. Okay. But I'm okay to concede the point tonight that whether we call it a sidewalk or a path, I will revisit this topic come December or whenever it is we begin to nail down roads, and I might lose it then too. But I want to see.
And we did widen some roads this year, didn't we, John?
Yes.
We did.
Yes, we did. And that was appreciated. And I will make this one last point, and it's to remind this board, even if none of that 4 million were to go to paths, as we keep having pointed out, we have money in the general fund. We have the ability to do some of the things that people are clamoring for in the areas where it makes the most sense. So I hope that because we've not left it as unallocated ARPA funds, which feels like free money, and now we've allocated, now it feels like, taking taxpayer money from the general fund. We can't do that. No, it's there for things that are worthy and necessary and appreciated within the community. So I'll have to revisit that. I withdraw my point on the restriction.
And I'll concede this too, Jim. If we do $4 million in roads this year, I think we'll get caught up enough that next year we could look at more of what you want as far as paths or widen shoulders or whatever we need to do. But I would like to see the roads. And that was kind of the goal of utilities, to have 2 big years, $4 million, get our roads caught up, and then maybe next year we can say, okay, now we got to sit down, we can do something. But at least we get our roads figured out. I was pretty excited this year about the roads we got taken care of. And Rod will even admit our calls about roads were way down this year from what they were years before.
And there was a decent number of compliments in those surveys over roads. I was surprised because if they like them, usually don't say anything. If you hate them, you complain. So,
well, I think the big plus was that we ended up doing that at the same time the county was doing arterial roads. They redid like 36, Bauer. Now they redid Fillmore. And we ended up doing a lot of our roads along. It just happened that way that Ottawa County was doing a lot in here. So it looked like we just, and some was just county, but it really made us look good.
We fixed the darn roads.
Yeah. Well, we did it.
And as far as paths too, we do have one, and I forgot to ask that question. So there is a connection now in Cottonwood to the Greenway Trail. And did you find out, Rob, is that the money we paid a year ago for that, or are we going to be getting a bill for that one?
I don't know. Ron, do you know? We've paid almost 400,000?
Paid like 340, and I don't think that was for this latest.
That was for the past, so I don't think it's been paid yet, is what we're saying.
So that one will be coming up. Is that something we need to add to the budget?
Okay. I would say no. Let's see what.
Because I think we still have a commitment to them of $500 and some thousand. So that's a
What's
financial liability. The Greenway project that goes behind the sewer plant over to.
On that. Yeah.
Somewhere
The water treatment plant.
And guess what? We can connect with that Greenway also, all the way down 36, all the way down to Grand River Park. Wouldn't that be sweet? Thousands of people connecting in.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome if Hudson Public School would put the sidewalk in on 36. It'd be a long ways away.
Yeah, there's some sidewalk here and there. But
seems they own that mile.
All right, so this is my last to see if there's a consensus in this direction. I have been quietly pushing for the past 5 months for salary increases for our employees. We've not gotten it out of committee. I realize that we have with this budget planned for likely increases at the end of the year commensurate with what we've done in the past, which has been maybe 2%, based on CPI, 1% based on merit, 1% catch up maybe for employees who are at a lower rate and need to be caught up and brought closer. I think we need to go further. Again, you can appropriate and yet, not make decisions at this very moment in terms of exactly how much would be spent. But as I look at the increases, they're the normal type of anticipated status quo increase that we've done in past years. I don't think I look at it, Kirsten. I understand your points. I think we could have done that with the previous year's budget as well and the one before that, if we looked at it in that manner. So I don't see, and I guess look at you, Rob, whether Dan and or you, and going over this and proposing salaries and wages, et cetera, longevity pay, whether you had a percentage target increase or whether you did something commensurate with previous years. I mean, I can do some of my calculations myself, but I guess my point being, it seems to me you've baked in what has been sort of the normal expected, not the 2022 reality expected.
Right.
All right. So I would like to see us increase in this budget salary and wages and longevity pay. I'd like to see us uptick another 6% to give the margin necessary that at the end of the year there could be both an increase for merit, one for maybe catch up, the standard sort of increase thinking of CPI, and then the recognition that CPI has been 8.3% for this past year, that people are going backwards right now. Our employees are going backwards. And people would say, well, I didn't get a raise and my company hasn't done this and that. Well, your company should, because right now people are going backwards. So if we've got money here and we're being said to have a lot of surplus money, one of the things we should think about is even one of the reasons we have some surplus is we're currently in a position of underpaying our employees. And I think it's time that we showed the value that we should have in them for the longevity that they have shown us. And I would love to see, it would be a hairball to try to decide, openly, well, should it be this or should it be that? I'm looking for just if we're talking budgetary numbers and the actual realities will not occur until the end of the year and looking forward to the next year, I'd like to see us take it up 6% and create the margin at least versus having to try to amend the budget at the end of the year to so include it. So that's where I'm coming from. I know that we care. I'm not meaning by saying, you guys don't care about. I know we all care about our employees. I think we have to show that care in a more tangible, in a significant way, because I want to see when these do come open, and there haven't been a tremendous number of positions that have opened. We've had 2 or 3 here of late. And then testing the market, we realized we've gotten 1 application for this open position, 0 for this one. And I'm talking assessing and zoning. We've got 2 at the front desk who've left. That's more entry level. But we've had about 4 departures inside of a month. And we're realizing that whatever we think we ought to do or not do, the market's telling us differently. And the market's saying you're not where you ought to be. And to what extent that played a part in anybody who's left thus far or might be thinking about it, I don't know. It might only be a percentage. Might not be a deciding factor whatsoever, or it might be the cause that you first start looking around. And I think before you do that, you say, these people are valuable. I want to show it. And so if we could give authority to increase the salary wage lines. I'm not talking for us, obviously, not board members, not even, more rudimentary positions. I don't know if that'd be like people come and do board review or whatever, although that'd be peanuts. But I'm talking about our regular employees who are here day in and day out, and giving more of an ability to increase at the end of the year, without, designating right now exactly what that would amount to.
If you make a motion, I'll support that, Jim.
That's one of the reasons why it didn't make out of committee, though.
Still in committee.
Because that's why it didn't make it out, because now you're proposing something a little differently than what was in committee.
Because it was 8%.
Yeah, it was
but there's 2 in here, and there's
3 to 5% is what they normally have all the way already in there. And the proposition was 8 to 10% increase above that, and $1,000 bonus.
And I would love that still.
I'm just saying that that ended up being 11 to 15%.
Maybe you pushed me down because I couldn't. But
I'm just saying, 6% is more reasonable now. That's more of a discussion point. When it was originally promoted and brought up as 11 to.
Fashion is right. So we normally we think about 1, 2, 1 plus 6. You could be looking at 10. I'm right where I was.
But that's not what I was proposing.
I want to do it mid-year, and that's why I was talking the numbers I was. But if you're doing end of the year and you're already doing 4, you do another 6, you're doing 10, I think we make some people happy.
I think back to some months ago.
It's not free money when you've earned it, and when you've been underpaid, it's not free money.
I agree.
It's the whole Barack Obama thing.
It's not free.
But what I'm
money.
saying is, this is in committee.
It never.
Dan is he coming in? I know he's going to meet with me. But Dan had a reason why he had people on at the rates they're at. That's what we were talking about in finances. There's a reason Dan did this. John, you could back me up on this. Dan did stuff for a reason, correct? Dan knew what he was doing. He had him on that path. So why didn't he throw out those, raises? There was a reason.
Because he didn't manage us through 2022 with 8.3% CPI and going up. And because in committee we were talking about a mid-year action. Here we're talking about a budget for next year, so it's appropriate to bring it up here as it relates to the budget. Not going backward to what I tried to get you to do in June. I'm looking forward to what I hope we do this next year. And I hope people will hang in there knowing that there is recognition coming. If not, in addition there too, I'd still love to see us do something this year. But if you keep saying, Michael, we've got the money.
And that's just it. There's plenty of fluff in there. These salaries. There's plenty of room. I mean, we got plenty of room. We could even do your 15%. It's in there. We've got the room.
I asked that. You're right. I just have homework on it. And there's not quite we could do something now, partway through the year in the way of either a bonus, so to speak, or structured as longevity pay mid-year, or even a salary uptick. And we've got room for that partially. So, but we haven't done that. And so if we were to split it here and some at the end of the year, I'd be great with that. But if it's not moving here mid-year, then I'm looking at the end of the year saying we better do something significant all at once then, unless there's an openness to a sort of a two-part.
I was never opposed to the idea of doing it. I was opposed to the number that was proposed in Finance Committee.
I said 8%.
This is more reasonable.
PI is 8.3.
On top of the current 3 to 5%, because I remember asking that specifically, plus a bonus.
Yes.
So that's why when it started averaging out, it was significantly
higher. You know why?
higher.
Because CPI is 8%, 8.3, and you take that, and then you also give them what they earn at the end of the year as your customarily,
I just know, perception-wise, it would not look good to do that. I'm like the worst person to talk to about this too, and I remember bringing that up in the committee too. I work for a nonprofit. I'm not getting a 10 to 15% raise. It just is not in the cards for it. So I'm like, that was my issue. I was never opposed to doing some type of increase. The opposition was the amount. And there's a lot of people out there that have not gotten raises. And there's a lot of people, I just was worried about the perception of what that looks like to the community. That, we're talking about a surplus. We're giving it to our staff. I am not opposed to giving it to the staff and making sure we're in line. But I also don't want the community to be like, oh wow, they have our tax money and they're increasing their wages. I mean, I pay attention to things that go on online a lot. I follow a lot of that stuff online. I laughed when some of the main responses when we actually started charging in the Maplewood Lake area was like some of the responses were, oh, they must be increasing their pay. They must be increasing the pay. The timing was terrible at that time. Now, if you have a reasonable 6%, perhaps, that is more reasonable. But initially when it was brought up, it was a lot higher. It was a 12 to 15%. I remember specifically doing it, plus $1,000.
Never use it, but you know
it was
what?
on top of the current.
Exactly.
So
and I would. So that'd be 12.
On top of that.
That'd be 12 if you go 8% in the middle of the year and 4% at the end. Right. That would have been 12 plus $1,000. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I stay guilty.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I don't make my decisions on something like this based on the misperception or the ill-informed nature of some in the community who would say, I don't get it, and shoot their mouth off. If they understood what we understand, the way we budgeted, what we pay people, I won't mention, we have an employee here, and you all know, who's been with us for several decades. It's embarrassing to see what that hourly rate is. I think whether the public would fully grasp it or not, I would hope they would do like I would do with my church and look and say, I'm glad we're paying our pastors well. I would feel badly otherwise. They're not supposed to be poor as a church mouse. I hope we pay our people at the township good. I hope that they're taking care of people. That means something to me as a community member. I hope that's their magnanimous way of looking at it versus saying, well, I didn't get a raise. But you're right. I don't disagree, Ryan. There would certainly be some of that perception, but should that keep us from doing the quote unquote right thing, you know?
And that's what I'm saying now, approaching a smaller number is more reasonable.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
The amount is more reasonable now.
Okay, I won't argue my way out of it. All right.
It sounds like there's... What does this look like? You're talking about a 6% raise.
30,000 per percentage. That's 180,000 more in the budget.
Next year.
Yep.
Now, is there money in the budget now currently that we can do this?
Yes.
Without having to amend the budget?
Not the full 6%, but there's roughly maybe 4% that could be done right now in the budget.
So do we need to make a motion to amend the budget to add that extra 2%? Or is there money in the budget that we can move around to do that? That's the question I have.
Mm-hmm. There's plenty of money in the budget.
Well, I'm asking. So do we need, so does the motion have to be, so there's two motions, we get one or two things. You either make a motion and we amend the budget and we add $180,000 to the salaries, or we make a motion that we give our employees a 6% raise.
What do we have to do?
Within the budget.
I think this is a committee issue, and it sounds like you probably have the numbers
When I have authority, if it's
in committee.
$1.
I don't know why we're discussing it now, trying to circumvent committee.
It came up through a board discussion about a budget for next year, so it appropriately came up. But you're right, it's digressed into past discussions in finance.
I have a comment, if that's okay, and maybe it's a question too, but it kind of ties this component along with the millage rate component, which would be then my comment to that one once that comes down to vote, if it does. I have this similar sentiment to Ryan as it relates to optics-wise, and private sector isn't seeing an 8% increase. They're seeing the regular 3 to 5. They are seeing some bonuses, so that to me feels like that's on par. If we do a bonus, you don't lock into a particular increase rate because we don't know what 23 looks like, and a lot of businesses aren't doing that. So it's kind of off balance as it relates to perception for sure in what our community is feeling versus then what we give our constituents. That's my comment there. My second then ties to millage is if we have, Michael, you brought up taking it down those couple percentage points would be about $300,000, $400,000. If you do it simultaneously where we're giving employees, yes, on par rate, plus then we're giving back to our constituents that's better optics, they feel confident that we're thinking of them as well, without really causing too much exposure because we do have it in the budget. My third comment is regarding surplus, and Jim, your comment around what you're hearing from constituents, and you're right. It's almost like a 1-2 punch. Our constituents say we love our tax rate, but we hate the frivolous spending. The reason why we have frivolous spending is because we have this surplus that we haven't yet defined, and we keep getting all this money, it gets thrown at it, and then we're sitting on a mound of money, and they're like, let's do a waterfall, and let's do a clock tower, and that's what's upsetting them. So, if we go back to optics, we go back to good budgeting, we could go back to this budget, give money at an appropriate inflation rate increase to our internal folks, give money back to our constituents as well, and provide confidence in both measures. And so that's almost a comment. I don't know if there's motion worthy or not, but that's my 2 cents in tying the two together.
All right. I don't wish to.
Can I give my 2 cents really quick? I'll be super fast. But Gary has this gift for saying little nuggets of things that then like stick in my brain in a positive way. And he said this one about the survey results earlier that I'm now going to like continue to chew on. But a few months ago, before we even scheduled our goal setting meeting, we were having a conversation, maybe during board discussion, about the inflation rate. And the little nugget that Gary said at that point is that we have to remember that we have to be good stewards of our finances, good stewards of our constituents' tax money. But we also have to remember that a primary role that we have as a board is as an employer. And I, of course, knew that we were an employer, but just my employment background has never lent itself to being an employer, so that isn't the first thing that ever pops into my head. But since Gary gave me that little nugget of wisdom to chew on, I have a lot, and so I am absolutely in support. Jim is where all I wanted to say was that Gary's awesome with his little nuggets of wisdom. They give me things to think about. But then from that, Jim, I'm very much in support of what you're proposing, which is an increase. I think that the work of that, I think that we have to isolate the conversation to an increase in the budget, because this conversation right now is the budget. And then if the money is so allocated in an amendment to the budget, then we need to send that knowledge into committee to talk about what that actually looks like, connecting dollar amounts to names of people at the end of the year, and have that come back out of committee, because I do think that we don't want to overstep things going through committee. But I think that it's absolutely an appropriate conversation to be having as part of what we're allocating in our budget. And I think that you should make that motion. John already said that he would second it, but I would too.
Thank you. I want to say one thing before that. I respect what Ryan and Michael have said. I really didn't mean for it to digress in the committee. I honestly didn't. I was trying to address this looking forward with this budget and seeing that this was the time to speak to the budget. I would withdraw from consideration tonight the question of whether anything would be done in this year, that is in this present time right now, as it pertains to the employees, until it should go through committee and come to the board. I would focus my comments in only on the budget for this next year, realizing, as we keep saying tonight, that we're talking about an allocation and not a final commitment in terms of the exact numbers. And so to keep it real simple is, and only looking at that one point, would be to say, I would move that we increase salary and wages by 6% in this new budget year in terms of what we budget for. And help me on this. I want to define this motion. Help me on this, though, Rod and Rob. I obviously am not intending to include the board with that comment. I don't know whether I have to define who I mean when I say that, or what departments. I would suggest that it should be any employee of the township, but am I forgetting about someone in saying that, or including someone we would not otherwise intend to? I don't intend to include us, is what I'm saying.
Or the superintendent.
You've agreed that would be the case with your initial year, so no, or the superintendent.
Right.
Okay, with that motion.
Second.
Okay.
Hourly and salaried employees who are not elected and not the superintendent. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Is it just increasing the budget? I mean,
just increasing the budget right now, or the allocated amount, not
just because it increases doesn't mean you have to spend it. So what difference does it make?
Right. Well, maybe it's
that's what I'm saying.
Full preparation.
We'll hack it out.
For the committee when it's ultimately
subtract one person.
Jim, and the corresponding other costs that will go up automatically, like FICA,
payroll tax.
Yeah, anything related to payroll as well.
Right.
Just goes up as those go up.
Right. And Rod got me the quote. It's like $29,300 for every 1%. So it's roughly 180 that we're talking about. But of course, it's a recurring expense then, and that's understood. You know, don't give it one year and take it away.
It's still going to committee.
Whether we do something now, yeah, right. It'll still go into committee.
You're still going to make a decision at a committee.
Yeah. All right. So all I'm talking about is the budget.
Right.
It sounds like, it sounds like we have the makings of a consensus for it, budgeting for that with determination to be made in the future.
Jim, it bothers me that I think we have 29 now full-time employees, and to lose 4 in a month is scary.
I can appreciate that, but I think turnover, is a part of the tumultuous times we're in, but I think we're gonna do well. I think we're gonna do well.
Yeah.
And this is part of doing well. So.
And to have so few applicants, none, there's something wrong. And we need to take a close look at that.
Well,
they anticipated that at this stage we'd have about 60 full-time employees here at the township. Dan used to say that with our population we should have closer to 300, 350. And we've been operating with 27, and then we increased it to 29. That is incredible. And these people are working very, very hard, and they're doing the job of many, many people. As we lose them, that's going to hurt us. We lose that experience.
So we're not gonna, because we value them. So we value them.
I appreciate you being proactive.
Okay. And I know you, and again, I'm going to say, and I know you all appreciate our employees. This is not meant to distinguish in that respect, so please don't hear what I'm not saying. All right. So, moved, it's been seconded. We've talked a long time.
I guess my question would be, so if we increase 6% across the board, how are we going to balance our revenues with our expenditures then? We just have to pull more from our general fund?
Yeah, for appropriations, we just assign more from fund balance.
Okay.
Balance.
Please assign more from
In a budget, for budget.
That's what I'm saying. So it has to match. I mean, they have to equal.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we're going to have to do, which is pull it from the fund. Right. So I would say we could probably look at it. I'm just looking at what we had appropriated in.
Michael, I'm looking forward to, again, back to revenue sharing, that type of thing too. So when it hits reality, I hope the estimates are true.
In 2021 we had appropriated $160,000 for assessing, and the actual was $145,000, so that's $15,000. So we're always pretty, I forget what the word Kirsten used, heavy or loaded, I don't know. I don't want to say a word that's going to offend you.
But that I just need to correct, that's not the definition of
thank you
fat,
very much.
because fat would be spending it. If you were spending it.
I don't know.
Appropriations is different.
Overinflated. That's not offensive? You okay with that, Jim?
All right, Michael. Are you guys ready to vote?
Yeah.
There's a motion before you. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Passed. All right, 6-1. All right, second public comment period. Those of you who've hung in there with us, if there's anything you wish to speak to, it could be something we talked about tonight. It could be something completely unrelated to any of the agenda. Yes,
Actually, we didn't vote on the millage.
Yeah, I was going to just ask really quick. The motion we just voted on was your amendment, Jim?
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
You have that down there.
Hold that thought.
We still have motion.
My bad. We still have the motion. Huh?
Still motion on the floor for the
We
budget.
still have the yes, we do. Yes, we do. Okay.
So I would make a motion, we reduce the millage rate from 2.25 mils to 2.0 mils for 2023.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. We've had enough discussion on that.
Probably.
All in favor? Let's do a roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Montai?
Yes.
Mr. Valdink?
No.
Mrs. Steele?
No.
Mr. Swam?
No.
Treasurer?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes. Supervisor?
No.
4-3, no.
Okay. Now, with the amendment having been passed related to the 6% increase, now this motion that's before you as amended to approve the resolution to adopt tentatively the 2023 budget and schedule a public hearing for September 26th of 2022. Is everyone ready to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call that one too, Ryan, if you would.
All right. We're strictly voting on just the approval to adopt it as tentative.
Yeah.
With the
change.
6% increase. Okay. Let's go the other way. Mr. Swam?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Belnick?
Yes.
Mrs. Monti?
No.
Treasurer?
No.
Clerk is a yes. Supervisor?
Yes. Okay. It's passed. Are we ready to move on? Second public? Yeah? Okay. Sam?
Hey, my name is Sandy Ross-Camp. I live at 2487 Cedar West Drive. And I will first say that I know you guys have spent a lot of time on this, a lot on the budget. I appreciate your time. I've not spent nearly as much time as you have, but I just had a couple of comments. Number one, I'm sorry I can't be there at the public comment on September 26th. I'll be out of town. But it seems like there's two areas of confusion just in the whole discussion. One of them is the different accounting principles and how things have been allocated into different buckets, if you will. And I don't know if this is a possibility, but maybe to avoid some public confusion on this, some of the prior years can be restated with any sort of asterisk that just says, all right, we're changing things a little bit here, but if they were prior to, this is what they would look like, because then you wouldn't have the big adjustments in terms of the percentages and the dollars. So just a thought, to help avoid some confusion in terms of the public. I think the second thing has to do with the ARPA funds. At my quick look, it looks like we got $4.8 million, and when I compare the 2022 budget with the 2023 budget, if you take out the ARPA funds, the budget really only went up $172,000, so it really didn't go up much. We've got a lot of dollars that we're getting that we don't normally get. So I also might suggest that if we're talking about the ARPA funds, we talk a little bit about how they're used. I know a lot of them are being used for one-time expenses. I'm not suggesting that we go by and say, all right, this is how every single dollar has been spent. But overall, you've got some big capital expenditures, and also discuss if any of those funds are being used to help support the general operating budget, because if they are, then next year what you're going to be doing is looking at a pretty big jump because you won't have the ARPA funds, right? So I think some of that in terms of discussion on how you talk about the budget there. I'm also wondering if any of the ARPA funds are being used to support small business owners in the township, just because they are the drivers of job creation. And so I would just make the suggestion that if there are any additional dollars in there to support the small business owners and job creation and job growth. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well said. Anyone else? Mr. Bush, yes.
Thanks, Gordon. It won't take long.
Yeah.
Just kind of wanted to give, again, Joe Bush, your Ottawa County Water Resources Commissioner. Just wanted to give a brief update so everybody can hear me. I wanted to bring a map and talk about the inspection reports that we've been doing since 2020. During the COVID year, everything in red in your township, which is highlighted in yellow. And we are the current 312 inspection reports. Really, that means that's spots or locations that we've done work in your township. On drainage, most of your drains are buried in the ground, and Georgetown, there's quite a few open ones too, but a lot of them are enclosed. And I know I got to be here tonight for the utilities committee. We got a couple topics in there. I wanted to bring some maps. Any questions for that? Also, I wanted the board to know that we've been working with Hudsonville Public Schools on their new building. We've had some of your constituents, my constituents as well, with some drainage concerns. We've been meeting on site with GMB and the school, which they've been great to work with. They've been meeting with us and the property owners to ease their concerns to make sure the place floods. So Hudsonville Schools, kudos to them to be able to meet me and the engineers on site for that. And also, I know society left on the development. There is still more housing going up in Georgetown. But again, it is slowing down. Gary's right. I'm seeing that tick down countywide. So I'm seeing that in every township. It is slowing down. It's not what it used to be, but it's still going pretty well. They're finishing up what they started. So I just want to give an update on that. And then I think that's it. Any other questions for me at this time? I want to give a quick update, not take a lot of time. Thanks for your discussion on the budget. It's a big topic. It's what your constituents want to know about it and learn. So thanks for that discussion. I know it takes a while. sat on that side of the board as well. Before I got it here, so I do get it. So thanks for that. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer, but I think drainage-wise in your township, things are going pretty well. Wednesday, we do have a board determination here for the Roosevelt drain. We'll see how that goes. If that is a position by the people. So we'll see what direction that goes with the board determination. See if there's a project or not. But that is Wednesday. And that's just another issue of flooding. Or in 2021, we had some high water issues over there. We'll be looking at that. See what happens on Wednesday.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Your title used to be Drain Commissioner, right? And it's Water Resource Manager or something?
Water Resources Commissioner, but again...
Hardest working Water Resources Commissioner in the whole area, if not the state. Here.
Sorry.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Honestly.
It's very transparent. We have 17 townships in the city and a village that oversees drainage. Again, we have 312. I got a small staff. I got one drain inspector and pretty much doing all these.
Unbelievable.
It's a lot of work, but we're here to serve, and that's what I love to do as well as you guys are. And it's got the whole county, which really takes it to a different level when you're talking priorities. Infrastructure is one of our biggest priorities. And thanks for what you're doing for roads, because I worked for the road commission 12 years, so in the engineering department, so I get that side of it too. They're important. A lot of people complain about them. So the funds for roads are important. Can't rely on the landscape to get it done, but you can rely on the local to try to help as much as possible. My time is up.
Okay.
I just want to give you a heads up.
Thank you.
Joe?
Anyone else?
Just to let you guys know, Joe always takes my call when I call down there, so he's always approachable. So I appreciate that, Joe.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. None. Second public comment period is closed. Discussion, general information. I know we still have a utilities meeting. We still have to go to closed session. I hope that there's none, but you're welcome to. Anybody?
Yeah, I do have one. I forgot. With the $1.4 million for the 2 sewer upgrades, that's the ARPA money for our proprietary fund, water and sewer, is not listed as a capital outlay or an asset. And you say it's in depreciation depletion. So it's not a line item. Aren't we required to have it as a line item? Or why can't we just take like meters, which is going to be $1 million, why can't we just throw that in depreciation, depreciation?
Because it doesn't meet the definition of a fixed asset. It's more of a part than that. And it wouldn't even have the life. Understand, it doesn't hit the budget yearly hard, the big items, because those big projects are 50-year life. So you're spreading that cost over 50 years.
Oh yeah, I understand the depreciation schedules,
right.
But the question is that valve, which is a pretty expensive piece, is an actual asset, a capital asset.
Some go into fixed assets, some go into capital outlay, depending on the dollar amount.
But I just wonder, where's the accounting portion of it that we know that went in there?
I guess I'm confused.
Then that's the same way I am. I'm confused.
Well, I'm confused. Right. I'm not understanding your question.
I probably have to ask the accountants. That would probably be the question for them.
What piece are you talking about?
So how can that just go, like meters are, I'm going from memory, almost $1 million, but that's listed as just meters. It's not capital outlay, fixed asset. So the $1.4 million seems like it should be a line item in that budget, in that department, so we can track it. Otherwise, if we can just throw stuff onto...
Let me look. I don't have it all.
We got a 1.7 million depreciation deletion. So if we got that, why don't we just throw everything in there? We could throw the meters on there. We could throw whatever. I mean, anything on there. Why do we even line item it? And that's where and I'm not questioning anything. I'm just saying it seems like we need some accounting on that.
So it's all under meters.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is meters is there, but the $1.4 million to this lift station upgrades is not listed anywhere under maintenance, because that would fall under maintenance if you're saying it's a maintenance and it's not a depreciable asset.
The lift station would be.
Right, so that would be maintenance?
Again, a depreciation.
Sounds like a great discussion for afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's what I just want clean books. I want this to be done the right way. I want to make sure if it's should be under maintenance, it's under maintenance.
No, a lift station replacement or major repair is going to be a fixed asset, depreciated over 50 years, that will fall under the line item depreciation and depletion. And then we also have a fixed asset schedule that we update
which is
annually.
currently like $56 million. I want to say we've depreciated about what about a third of our pipes?
The answer is the line item for the expense is depreciation, and then we have a fixed asset schedule that has all the fixed assets, when they were purchased, how much, and how many years they've been depreciated. And after, for example, 50 years, they're off the books.
Right.
If I'm answering your question, Mike.
Nope.
How am I not?
I'm just asking the method of where things get put in, how they get put in.
And they get put in under depreciation and depletion. All of our fixed assets under the water department are under depreciation depletion, and we're up to about $1.8 million yearly of depreciation expense for all of those water sewer fixed asset items.
Yep, and like meters, I want to say meters are a 20-year depreciation schedule?
I don't have
or amortization schedule?
The big items are 50 years. I don't have that memorized.
Yep, so, and that's why I wonder with that one then, why is that not listed as capital outlay? Fixed asset, because it's a fixed asset.
No, meters are expensed. That's why they're under the line item meters for expense. They're not capitalized. So when we buy a $140 meter, that's expense under meters. That's why we have $1.1 million in the meters expense budgeted for next year.
So that $1 million for meters will not go into our depreciation schedule?
No.
List of assets?
Yes, correct. They will not.
They will
They're
not.
expensed.
Okay.
I just have one discussion item before we leave, and it is simply that Friday was such an enormous day in this township, and I want to make sure that our sheriff's department and our fire department have heard how profound our appreciation is for their leadership and bravery and problem solving and troubleshooting and just keeping all of us safe and informed. You guys are so appreciated, and please convey our appreciation to your teams. I was out of the state, and so I was following it all just through social media and emails on this end and emails from school, and was just in disbelief how much was asked of your teams on Friday, so thank you.
Rob, if I can ask, how long have you been with us now? How many months?
4.5.
4.5 months, and the way you rattled off these numbers is amazing. So thank you.
Put in the time. Appreciate it. All right, last comment for me. Ottawa County Road Commission, there's an opening reminding you that by the end of the year, if you've got somebody you want to recommend to me, I would love to know who it is and interview them and kind of promote them. So be thinking about that. At this point, just so the public knows, we're going to go into closed session. We'll come out of closed session and there will be no further business done. So not much point in sticking around, although you're welcome to do so. So is there a motion to go into closed session at this time to discuss an attorney-client privilege opinion?
So much support.
I move support. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in closed session. We will retreat to the boardroom over there, the smaller one. A motion to adjourn? All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks.